Peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you. My name is Noura Nashawati, and it's an honor to once again welcome you to the 3rd Annual Interfaith Symposium. Today, we bring together diverse leaders from all walks of interfaith backgrounds. We started out 2 years ago with representations of all the major faiths in the United States. Last year, we discussed the spectrum of interfaith work. This year, we cover the vast areas of interfaith work under this theme, Uniting Against Adversity. Uniting Against Adversity. We unite. We unite in this climate of bigotry and hate to prove that yes, we can do better. Yes, we can serve our collective communities. And yes, we can unite and celebrate our differences. Our participants from all backgrounds and faiths from today's symposium are in the front rows. Please give them a warm welcome. First up, our keynote speaker today is Dr. Jonathan Brown, the Al-Walid bin Talal Chair of Islamic Civilization in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University, and the Director of Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding. Be sure to check out his full bio and his publications in the program. Dr. Brown will introduce the vast environments that interfaith work intersects and the need to unite. Please welcome Dr. Brown.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Okay, well, I'll start with a story. Right? The story is that my father-in-law, Dr. Samuel Arian, maybe older folks might have heard of him, maybe some younger folks too. So back in the 1990s, he was a Muslim leader in Florida, a Palestinian activist for Palestinian causes, for Muslim causes. He started a school, a Muslim school in Tampa, Florida. And in the early 2000s, the U.S. government accused him of all sorts of horrible crimes, and he was innocent of all these. And ultimately, the government dropped their case against him after years of suffering and putting him in prison and solitary confinement, even though he hadn't been convicted. And this was in the early 2000s, which a lot of you remember is a real time of fear for Muslims. Now Muslims are, being oppressed and targeted, but we have a lot of support. Back then, there was not so much support for Muslims. It was a lot less popular. But when my father-in-law was arrested, the people who came to his aid were not Muslims. Muslims were too scared. The general Muslim community was very afraid. People who came to his aid were interfaith partners, because in the years before he was arrested, he had worked with developing relationships with churches and synagogues and other places of worship, other religious communities, who all had common interests in social justice, in civil liberties, and they had grown to know each other through this activism. So when he was arrested, a lot of these people stood up and said, no, this person we know is not guilty of this. The person we know is not the person you're saying he is, U.S. government. And they went to his trial, and they attended to court all the time, and they visited him in prison, and they stood by and supported him. Until this day, they're friends with him and friends with his family, and I've met many of them. The reason I bring this story is 2 reasons. One is that Muslims need to appreciate the willingness of other communities to speak up for us and to stand up for us and to be partners and allies. A lot of times, just as a person, can not be appreciative of gifts they're given, not be appreciative of the friendships they have, not be appreciative of the work other people do for them. I'm probably like this. Right? Not be appreciative of their spouse. I'm definitely like that. But we have to always have it in our mind that whenever there is someone from another religious community who offers a hand to us, we should think about that, right? And we should, especially if they're not asking for anything. So, sometimes interfaith can be a strategy for, let's say, getting Muslims to concede on something. So let's say someone might say, we want you to do this interfaith work, but we want you to come out in support of the Israeli government or something like that. Or we want you to do this interfaith work, but we want you to condemn this Muslim cause or that Muslim cause. No, I'm not talking about that kind of interfaith work. I'm talking about people who come and say, we want to stand up for your rights. We want to stand up for your rights because we see you as fellow Americans, we see you as fellow people of faith, we see you as fellow human beings, right? We see you as people who have concerns for justice and are victims of injustice. When people offer that hand to you, you should be very, very appreciative. You should be very appreciative. And there's a lot of organizations that you're going to hear from today, organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace, that are working constantly on issues that are important to Muslims, issues like Israel-Palestine issue. And we have to remember the incredible pain and suffering that these people often face from their own communities when they stand up for Muslims. Standing up for Muslims is not always popular. In fact, until relatively recently, it was definitely not popular. Okay? And these people suffer. And they face a lot of consequences in their personal lives, in their professional lives. So if Muslims aren't there to take their hand when it's offered to them, and Muslims don't support these people, even if Muslims, can't be at a protest or can't be on stage with these people, we should always make sure we're supporting them financially. If they're asking for donations, we should make sure that we're supporting them morally, and at the very least, we show our gratitude. At the very least, we show our gratitude. So the first point I want to make is that when other communities stand up for our rights, we always have to be appreciative. We always have to be ready to help them when they need it, in whatever way they ask. People are allies and supporters because usually they have principles, but it's really, any of you who are parents, right, know what it's like when you do something for somebody and they don't appreciate it. It's not a good feeling, and it's not a good image to give of our community. The second point I want to make about my father-in-law's story is that you can't not do any work and then think all of a sudden everyone's going to come and help you. My father-in-law wasn't supported by this interfaith network because they just randomly read about his story in the news and decided he was someone who needed help. He had known them for years. They knew him as a person. They knew his family. They knew his work. And they knew when the government came out and said X, Y, Z about him, that this stuff wasn't true. There is no replacement for personal relationships and the trust that comes out of them. There is no relationship for these. A lot of times Muslims are worried about working with this group, working with that group. What happens if this group starts asking me to do, to participate in this prayer service and I can't do that because I'm not allowed to do that as a Muslim? What happens if this group starts asking me to support a certain cause and I'm not comfortable with it because it's too liberal and I'm a Muslim? Don't worry about these things from the beginning. If you worry about all these things, you'll never partner with anybody, because there's always things that someone could ask of you or might want you to do that you feel like you can't do or you can't give. But that's no reason. You just close all the doors before you even have a chance to know people. And a lot of times, after you build a relationship with people, they understand who you are. They understand what it means to be Muslim. What are Muslims' issues of sensitivity? Where are red lines for Muslims? And they won't ask things of you because they know you. So don't be afraid of what might happen or what might be a problem later on. Make those relationships first, and a lot of those problems will probably never appear. And if they do appear, then they'll be discussed and dealt with amongst friends who trust each other and who value each other. So you can't expect people to just be there for you without having built a relationship and done hard work. So I just want to leave these two central fundamental points with you as you hear from and meet some of the people who are going to come out after me and speak. One, if Muslims aren't receptive, and if they aren't grateful, and if they aren't willing to support it and willing to help other people help them, help's not going to last very long. And even if it does, it's not going to be as productive and yield as much fruit and as much results as it could if Muslims were active partners. The second point, as I said before, build the relationships. Be open to them regardless of what you think might happen, because with relationships comes trust. With trust comes the ability to overcome problems that might not be surmountable otherwise. So jazakumullahu khair. And please, I'm happy, everybody who's here, I'm very happy to see that you're here, okay? And when you get an email from Jewish Voices for Peace, or you get an email from one of these, a Latin Christian group for justice, don't delete the email. Open the email. Even if it's a mass email, open the email. See what they're asking for. And ask yourself, what is this person facing? What kind of pressure is this person facing? What kind of consequences is this person facing by standing up for an issue that means something to Muslims? And then ask yourself if it's really too much work for you to give some money, or you to show up at an event, or you to just, let's say, write an email saying, I want you to know that I really appreciate what you're doing. So think about that when you get these emails. Jazakumullahu khair.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Jonathan Brown. We really appreciate those pointers, and we will strive to implement those in our work. Next, we welcome several national leaders from all around the country who are engaged in interfaith activities, from dialogue to coalition building, and the big thing is that they are uniting over solving issues. First is Brother Mazin Mukhtar, the National Executive Director for the Muslim American Society. He will share with us what MAS is doing nationwide for interfaith. Please welcome Brother Mazin.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. The last 2 years have shown us more clearly than ever before the power and the need to come together and to work together. Not within one community, but across communities. Because what has become apparent and clearer than ever, that the issues with which we are grappling, it is not a set of issues for the Muslim community and a completely separate set of issues for Latinos and a whole other set of issues for another group of people. What has become apparent is that we share a lot in common. And by working together and building alliances, interfaith and interethnic communities, we build power. The power to create real change, the power to have an impact. And the Muslim American Society is active all around the country in reaching out, in being civically engaged, whether we reach out to our elected representatives or very often more rewarding, reaching out to interfaith partners, people who believe in what we believe in, people who believe in human dignity, working together so that, working united, we are able to have a greater voice and a greater impact. And today, the Muslim American Society recognizes this work and people who are involved in this work. It is part of our attempt to raise awareness of how important it is to bring to life the ayah, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, cooperate for righteousness and piety. The importance of reaching out, or as the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself did, he reached out and worked with people who are not Muslim before the message of Islam in an alliance of virtue. What united these people? It is their belief in higher virtues, and that was enough to work together, and that was enough to have an impact. And bi'idhnillah, we will work with partners who believe in the same values, in human dignity, to have an impact here and to help shape America. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallahu khair, Brother Mazin. Next, we have Brother Abdul Rahman Khan, the chairman of the Sharia Council of the Islamic Circle of North America. He's here to speak to us about the interfaith efforts of ICNA. Please give him a warm welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I also would like to remind ourselves with that verse, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. And in these days, we find ourselves having the need to cooperate with one another as we see what goes around us nationally and internationally. as a grassroots organization, ICNA, like MAS, would like to bring about betterment or reform, making society better. And this was the mission of all the prophets. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, in uridu illa al-islah mastatat. On behalf of Prophet Shu'aib, Allah informs us that his mission was to bring betterment of that society. And so in 3 areas, ICNA has for the past many years, and we are increasing in these areas of our self-purification and education, our outreach through our message of Islam, and our dialogue with our interfaith partners, local, regional, and national. We have had many dialogues last year and this year. The Muslim Jewish community, the Muslim Catholic dialogue, the Muslim National Council of Churches dialogue, and many of other faith-based dialogues that we have, that we see the need of supporting one another in what is good and eradicating what is evil. After all, this is our responsibility of all of us, to enjoin what is good and to join hands with those who want to enjoin what is good, and to shun evil, to stay away from evil, to avoid exploitation, harm, and injustices in society, and to join hands with those who also want to make sure that exploitation, harm, and injustices do not become part of our everyday life here in America or globally. And so interfaith dialogue, interfaith partnership is of vital need for us at this time, perhaps more than any other time. We join with MAS and all the other organizations in saying to you that this is the moment that we cherish and we appreciate all the dialogues, all the relationship we have with our interfaith partners, and I hope and pray that good, peace, and tranquility can come to this country and to the world at large. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid, and I chair Burma Task Force USA, as well as I'm president of Sound Vision, where Burma Task Force resides. Interfaith could be many things. Sometimes interfaith is about apple pie and introducing hummus or biryani. There's nothing wrong about that, either one of those things. But we must be purposeful. We must not be just a bunch of goofy people happy with each other. We need to have goals. We need to be somewhat businesslike and achieve those goals. At this time and age, there is a genocide taking place, my brothers and sisters. Here is a cause which is a humanitarian cause, in which all people of faith can join hands with each other. And this is not something which happened in the past, it is happening right now as we speak. And there is no genocide in the history which is probably as documented live as this genocide. For example, this village, it's there, and now it's not there. There are hundreds of satellite images telling us in last 3 months, about 400 villages are wiped out, million people are out. United Nations say 52% of all women are raped. That's where the question comes. Where were you when a genocide was taking place? Were you active? Were you silent? Were you just praying for it? Are you joining hands with each other against the map which is defined by rape in that area? Can we do something about it? There is a whole lot we can do. And its genocide is not in the history that you want to write in history books. It's happening right now. And there are things which we can do. United Nations, United States have the honor of being the first elected body of people in the world who passed a resolution in support of Rohingya people. Now there are two bills there. One bill is 2060 in the Senate. It's a bill, not a resolution. It is going to become a law only if we work together. So there is a need for coalitions, and there is a need for interfaith to find a purpose. Once they achieve, they can say, we achieved something. We stopped this genocide right in its trenches while it is happening. So this is an urgent call for my brothers and sisters of all faith. Interfaith to me is not just dialogue. Interfaith to me is people of faith working hand in hand to achieve something. And here is something which we can work on together, is stopping this genocide. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Are you with me? If you are with me, you can join forces. We're looking for champions in each city in the United States. And you can go to booth A31 and sign up and write down you're an interfaith person and you want to help change that situation. What is the most precious thing in life? Life itself. And historically, we know what happened to people. So Jews in New York has come together. They came up with something called Jacob, J for Jews and B at the end for Burma. I'm looking for Christians to do that. And we will have an action on February 7th. Before that, we want to connect with you, provide you the material. So we work with each other, influencing our senator and congressperson to achieve something good for America, that America, once again, played a critical role in stopping a genocide which is happening in front of our eyes. Are you with me, brothers and sisters? Thank you so much. Peace be with you.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdul Malik Mujahid. We earlier had the chance to hear from a youth representative from the Burma Task Force about how important it is for all of us to step up and help out. Our next guest is Mr. Mike Doyle, the Executive Director of the YMCA at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. His efforts have included addressing immigration, healthcare, and community activism. Please welcome Michael Doyle.
First of all, I want to say what a great privilege and honor it is to be here today. And I want to thank you for inviting me to speak. The current environment in our nation requires that we reach across divides and build bridges whenever we can to combat the rising hate and distrust in our society. You are to be commended for your leadership in bringing together different faith communities to unite against diversity. In that same spirit, the New American Welcome Center at the University Y and at a growing number of YMCAs across the country are being established to support foreign-born residents in their desire to integrate into American society, while at the same time preparing our communities to be welcoming and inclusive. We are working to accomplish this through a combination of services, collaborations with other community partners, and strategies to connect and build cross-cultural understanding between immigrants and foreign-born and U.S.-born residents. But let me step back for a second and provide some context for our work. Although many Americans think of the YMCA as a place where you can get some exercise and go for a swim, and yes, many of our Ys offer those services, the YMCA has a long tradition of working to address a wide range of community needs, including welcoming and integration of immigrants into our communities. In fact, the first recorded English as a second language course offered in the United States was established by the Cincinnati YMCA in 1853 to assist German immigrants coming to the United States. At the Y, strengthening communities is our cause, and we are committed to helping people, all people, reach their full potential. We believe the strength and cohesiveness of our communities is linked to the overall prosperity of the nation. With more than 42 million foreign-born individuals in the United States, it is more important than ever to foster an environment that encourages immigrant integration and cohesion. In response to the changes in our country, our national organization, in collaboration with several key affiliates in New York and Houston, as well as the national partnering organization Welcome America, has established a new model for a New American Welcome Center. The model focuses on 5 key pathways to integration: language and education, economic integration and employment, health and well-being, citizenship and civic engagement, and community development. But these initiatives cannot be done by one organization alone. I'd like to share with you a couple of lessons that we have learned to implement in implementing our New American Welcome Center in our community. First, this work is not about serving immigrants better. We also need to ensure that our communities are welcoming. If we plant a seed and we want it to grow and thrive, it will require outside support, such as water and sunlight. But if the soil is rocky and clay-like, the roots will not take and the plant will not thrive. Similarly, immigrants need services such as water and sunlight, but if the soil or the receiving community is unreceptive, we need to till and work that soil. Some of the most important work we need to do is to focus on the non-immigrant community to help break down those barriers. Second, there must be broad community engagement if we are to be successful in making impact. It cannot just be a small number of nonprofits that serve and working with immigrants, but it must include our elected officials, our public sector institutions like schools, clinics, and park districts, business leaders, as well as diverse faith communities. I want to thank you once again for your leadership, and would like to give a shout out to the Champaign-Urbana MAS chapter for their incredible work in our community and the support and collaboration they've given. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Our next guest is the National Executive Director of Alianzas Americas, Oscar Chacon. They work to bring out a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable way of life for Latino immigrant communities. Please welcome Mr. Chacon.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today, and I want to say how grateful I am to the organizers of this event for the opportunity to register before you our deep, sincere desire to become even closer with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Somebody said earlier that there are good things and bad things over the last couple of years. Certainly many of them are very bad things, including the executive orders that were announced at the beginning of this year. But the one good thing about it is that it has definitely brought closer communities that experience similar challenges. I am the executive director of an organization that is actually a network of Latin American immigrant communities in the U.S. There are nearly 22 million Latin American nationals residing in the U.S. today. They are part of the larger so-called Latino or Hispanic community, which is about 58 million people large. But the one area where we clearly come together and where we see a very important need for us to come together is that we need to come together in fighting against white supremacy, white nationalism. We need to come together in fighting also against the many policies that have brought the United States of America and many parts of the world to experience today the worst levels of economic inequality that we have seen in recent history. We also need to come together in fighting against every other form of oppression, discrimination that sadly remain part of our reality today. We have seen how particularly the struggle of women to assert their rights has become so important in the past several months, but this is just one layer of the many gender and other forms of discriminations that we also need to come together to fight against. So I stand before you just to say that it is an honor to be in this struggle with our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we look forward to more to do in the future. Thank you.
It is our honor to have you here with us. Our final panelist today is Molly Horn, the Communications Director of the Parliament of World Religions, an international leader in strategic interfaith organization Please welcome Molly.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to you all. I am, here from the Parliament of the World's Religions, which is the oldest, largest, most diverse and inclusive convening organization of the global interfaith movement. And I'm here hearing everyone talking about holding hands. So I'm here on behalf of the global interfaith movement to invite you to take mine. I'm working on a project to convene people from around the world for the 7th time on the Parliament of the World's Religions stage, to come from 70 to 80 countries, maybe more, in numbers 10,000 or more, to stand up and show the world the opposite of hate, the opposite of degradation, the opposite of greed. Our faith traditions, whether they be what we learn here in America as Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and people of non-faith, and maybe 20 to 100 other traditions, and what we learn around the world, somewhere has a common theme. And that common theme is that this is a big place. We need to live in it together. So we come together with the mission of creating a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world with a very specific method of doing that. First of all, we cultivate harmony. How do we do that? Building relationships, creating stages, creating spaces, creating forums around the world that bring people together of various different viewpoints to listen to each other, to hear each other, not always agree, to commit to things that they care about equally that affect us all. And we engage guiding institutions through these harmonious relationships to achieve a peaceful, just, and sustainable world. We're interested in the individual experience a human shift and opening of their heart to other people, but we're also interested in systemic change. Systemic change will remove the barriers that keep us from achieving a prosperous life together. We're going to Toronto in 2018, in November 1 to 7, to work on 6 critical issues together. That is the human rights and dignity of women. That is the empowerment of the next generation. It's standing with First Nations and Aboriginal peoples. It's dismantling war, hate, and violence. It's preventing climate change from wreaking its havoc on our beautiful creation. And it's also advancing justice in ways that we need to define in smaller ways and bigger ways, but in a way that is safe and inclusive to all. Our theme is the promise of inclusion, the power of love, pursuing global reconciliation, understanding, and change. We're hoping that you'll be with us as a partner. American Muslims have a lot of power to show the rest of the world how generously you live, how you live in grace, despite the assaults on your rights, and that there are brothers and sisters in humanity who stand with you. It's why I came to the Parliament, and it's why I hope you'll join me there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hopefully we will see some of your faces at the convention. So that's our 3rd annual IFS Interfaith Symposium. Each presenter in this group deserves our thanks and our commitment to seek out ways to engage with them. Let's give them a huge thank you. As they exit the stage, I will welcome our next 2. They're going to lead a very special recognition and present an award to a very special organization. Sister Karen Danielson has been involved in countless organizations in the Chicagoland area, placing a strong emphasis on interfaith work for the last 25 years. Brother Hussein Atta is our very own MAS-ICNA Convention chairman. Please give them a warm welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. We have a very special award to present to an organization that has tirelessly done a great deal of work on the behalf of American Muslims and Muslims the world over, and Palestinians especially. The Jewish Voice for Peace is a diverse and democratic community of activists inspired by Jewish tradition to work together for peace, social justice, and human rights. Their agenda fits in and supersedes groups like Not in My Name that speaks to the U.S. and to Israel governments together. JVP calls on America and the international community to end war, conflict, violence, and support Palestinian self-determination, free from the occupation and free from oppression and free from Zionism. We have two representatives joining us today and will be presenting the award. The chairman from the MAS-ICNA Convention, Hussein Atta, will be presenting this award to Leslie Williams, who is the co-chair for the National Network Against Islamophobia, which is a JVP, or Jewish Voice for Peace initiative. And she also co-chairs the Chicago JVP chapter here. We also have with us accepting this award is Rabbi Michael Davis from Congregation Makom Shalom here in Chicago, and a JVP representative of the Rabbinical Council. Hussein, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On your behalf, I'm honored to present this award, 16th Annual MAS-ICNA Convention, 3rd Annual Interfaith Symposium, Uniting Against Adversity, recognition Jewish Voices for Peace for their outstanding commitment and successful anti-Islamophobia campaign. Thank you very much well deserved.
Salam alaikum. On behalf of Chicago Jewish Voice for Peace, thank you for this tremendous honor. I especially want to thank Karen Danielson, a fierce and stalwart organizer and someone I am tremendously proud to work in solidarity with. My journey with JVP started just over 2 years ago when certain political campaigns were stating that Black lives did not matter, that gay and trans lives, brown lives, immigrant lives, and especially Muslim and refugee lives did not matter, that making America great again required obliterating our stories, our rights, our very lives. We heard a lot about walls and deportations and people who didn't belong here. It had gotten so bad that my rabbi said he felt as though we were living in Germany just before the Nazi takeover. So in my hometown of Evanston, a bunch of us decided to stand up for our values and our neighbors. I started calling people, the YWCA, various churches, rabbis from both synagogues. But one of my earliest and most vital supporters was Jewish Voice for Peace. With their assistance, before I knew it, we had a movement, hundreds of people gathering in downtown Evanston on a cold December night to affirm that yes, Muslim lives matter. A few weeks later, I was invited to join JVP as local coordinator of its Network Against Islamophobia. Since that time, we have answered a call for support from the Muslim American Society in Oak Lawn, blanketing the town with flyers demanding an end to Muslim profiling. We protested outside an Act for America meeting in Des Plaines. We demonstrated at O'Hare after Muslim bans 1, 2, and 3, and we've held press conferences and protests in support of Syrian refugees. We collaborated with the Muslim Education Center of Morton Grove on an interfaith peace march and rally in support of all marginalized peoples, Muslims, Latinos, African Americans, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQ community. So why, you might ask, does a Jewish organization work on Islamophobia? Well, we're not just any Jewish organization. Founded in 1966, JVP has always been an intercultural, interfaith justice movement, drawing together Muslim, Christian, and Jewish activists working for peace, justice, and human rights in Israel and Palestine. Although our focus is primarily justice for Palestinians, this work is deeply rooted in our overall commitment to human rights and equality. We see this as an essential part of our Jewishness, and in the words of our mission statement, we are inspired by Jewish tradition to work together for peace, social justice, equality, human rights, respect for international law, and a U.S. policy based on these ideals. We believe that all people deserve the right to democratic participation and equality within their societies, regardless of religion, ethnicity, culture, national origin, language, race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, or other status. This is why JVP unreservedly endorsed the Movement for Black Lives Matter platform of 2016, why our Deadly Exchange campaign works with African American and Latino activists on ending police violence in Black and brown communities. It's why we support Dreamers and DACA recipients in their fight to remain in the United States. It's why we loudly and proudly stand up for our lesbian, gay, and trans siblings. JVP's Network Against Islamophobia was created to serve as a resource for JVP chapters and as part of the broader Muslim-led movement against Islamophobia. We look at it within the context of US and Israeli foreign policy, and we are committed to challenging all manifestations, from individual hate crimes to state-sanctioned espionage and the war on terror. A key part of our justice work is holding our own community accountable. For those of us in the Jewish community, that means not only pushing back against unconscionable human rights violations committed in our name in Palestine, it means challenging the Anti-Defamation League, the Chicago Jewish United Fund, and the American Jewish Committee when they smear Muslim organizations or distribute funds to Islamophobic bigots, when they invite notorious Islamophobes to be their keynote speakers or fund police exchanges with Israel. We're not saying that the Jewish community is uniquely responsible for Islamophobia, but we are saying that as Jews of conscience, we are responsible for immoral actions taken in our community's name. Sadly, our work could not be more timely. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, hate crimes against Muslims were up 91% in the first half of 2017 compared to the previous year. And a recent survey found that 42% of Muslims reported bullying of their school-age children. The saddest thing about that is people who say that they see people just silently watching. This is why we must stand together and take a public stance against bigotry. After the December event in Evanston, our Muslim student speaker wrote that she received kind notes from spectators who said the rally had changed their perception, and now they will not be bystanders, but they will stand up against what is inhumane. As a Muslim American, this helped me feel safe. That 19-year-old woman, Bushra Amiwala, is currently running for a seat on the Cook County Board. Yeah. I am so proud of Bushra and proud of all that JVP has accomplished. However, none of our successes would have been possible without our diverse intersectional alliances with the African American, Latino, and LGBTQ communities. Many of our most ardent, outspoken, and passionate defund Islamophobia campaigners are queer and trans people, and in honoring JVP, you honor us all. We're all targets of the same bigotry. For example, Islamophobic expert Daniel Pipes has described both Muslims and trans people as threats to Western civilization. As Martin Luther King wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail, all are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Thank you and shukran for recognizing JVP and for being part of this powerful and unstoppable network for justice and human rights. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Wassalamu alaikum. 2 years ago, I had the privilege of addressing you from this stage at MAS-ICNA's inaugural Interfaith panel. Today, I'm deeply honored to be back here alongside my colleague, Leslie Williams, to accept this award from Karen Danielson and all of you on behalf of Jewish Voice for Peace. We have come together again to celebrate interfaith partnerships. Let us applaud Pope Francis, who has spoken publicly against the US administration's decision to move the US Embassy to the State of Israel from Tel Aviv to the holy city of Jerusalem. In so doing, the Catholic Church has joined the largest Jewish denomination, the Reform Movement, and MAS-ICNA. Jerusalem, a city that is sacred to the three Abrahamic faiths, cannot be turned into a political tool. As we just heard, Jewish Voice for Peace is speaking up for human values and Jewish values. And each of the members of JVP has their own story and own path to this work. Let me tell you where my story begins. One day, in early December 1938, in Vienna, Austria, Rosa and David Schiffman packed 3 small suitcases. They took their 3 young daughters to the train station. They hugged their girls. Along with her sisters, Ilza and Tudi, 8-year-old Ruth kissed her Mutti and Papi goodbye. The girls walked together past the barrier and the Nazi guards. They climbed aboard the train en route through Northern Europe to cross the English Channel. A few days later, their group arrived safely in London. Just 9 months later, World War II broke out. The girls never saw their parents again. Rosa and David were murdered by the Nazis. But a network of Jews, Quakers, and others forged a human bridge across several countries, carrying the children to safety. Ruth Schiffman was one of 10,000 German-speaking Jewish children who escaped Nazi Europe in this manner. And without the collaboration of thousands of people of good faith, of different religions and nationalities, all these children would have perished, along with the 6 million Jewish victims of the Nazis. Ruth went on to finish high school and marry, start a family, and live to see children, grandchildren, and over 20 great-grandchildren, and counting. Ruth Schiffman is my mother. My mother's story illustrates to me how precious our liberties are and how human beings can be so easily destroyed in the machinery of war and hatred. It also informs me how much can be accomplished in the face of adversity when people join together. So I was born in the United Kingdom and moved to Israel with my parents as a young boy. We sailed by boat from Athens, Greece, across the eastern Mediterranean. When the ship docked in Haifa, we were greeted with joyous Jewish music coming over the port's PA system. My family was welcomed by Israeli government officials and granted automatic citizenship. After all, we were Jews coming home to the Jewish state. Which is why it is all the more jarring to me and my fellow members of JVP that among you are so many Palestinians who are barred from living in your ancestral homes or even visiting them. Jews and Western Christians can make pilgrimages to the Holy Land without interference. Not so Muslims. And what I love about this conference is that we meet in a spirit of mutual respect. Elsewhere, that is not the case. If Muslims want to enter into interfaith dialogue, they must first agree not to bring up their legitimate grievances about Israel. At my synagogue, Makom Shalom, we don't agree about everything. We have a range of views on Israel, but we are committed to not letting these issues around Israel get in the way of being good neighbors to the Muslim community. When leaders from MASICNA visited Makom Shalom for a Shabbat dinner, we were deeply moved by your stories of discrimination today. Which Jewish person does not remember a time when we Jews were the ones who were shunned as outsiders? Immediately after the elections last year, Makom Shalom and other Jews joined with Christians and Muslims in asking the residents of Oak Lawn in Chicago to embrace their Muslim neighbors. This was one of many events that Jewish Voice for Peace has organized to bring people together. As Reverend Coy, who spoke this morning, and Karen Danielson and I walked down the main street, a Christian pastor in his clerical collar, a rabbi wearing a kippah, and a Muslim woman in traditional dress, an African-American man called out to us, "I'm with you," because interfaith partnership benefits all people. Ours is an expansive view of religion. Holiness is found not in defending my narrow interests, but in an inclusive vision for all. This is what the world expects from religion. This is the message of hope and holiness that we serve. On behalf of the dozens of rabbis and hundreds of thousands of members and supporters of Jewish Voice for Peace, we say shukran, we bless you, and we thank you.
It's been awe-inspiring work to gather with interfaith partners to bring about the betterment of this society. It's been an awe-inspiring experience to be in our third annual Interfaith Symposium. Also, to be able to reach the point where we are able to recognize and give thanks to our interfaith partners like JVP and their commitments and their sacrifices that they have to give up in order to do the work that they're doing on our behalf. Thank you so much, and let's give one more thanks to JVP and their efforts.